Touchdown, Pittsburgh!
Touchdown, Washington!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Steelskin Show, a show hosted by one diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan and one diehard Washington Redskins fan. From game recaps, game previews, news headlines, analysis, opinions, and all kinds of other stuff, we have got you covered on all things Pittsburgh Steelers and Washington Redskins. My name's Patrick, and I'm the voice of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm Chris, voice of the Washington Redskins.
Chris, scale of 1 to 10. Your excitement meter for tonight's Hall of Fame game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Arizona Cardinals. Where are you at?
Other than the fact that it's football, I'm not.
Not too much, yeah.
No.
I mean, it was hard for me today to get into all the football is back tweets. Because I saw, like, football is back, and I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a game tonight. And then I was like, oh,
No,
it's that one.
I don't get that. I used to kind of get amped, but
Yeah. Now, are they playing on that the same field they always have it?
yeah, but they've done a lot of work.
I hope so.
To that field.
Because that field's
And they've
traditionally
added
been a
some
death
seats.
trap.
Yeah, and they've done. Actually, our brother just drove by that field.
Would that be Casey?
Yes.
Oh, he's up there at, what is it, Cedar Point or whatever?
Well, he's back, but they drove right by the Hall of Fame, right by the
It's in Ohio,
the field.
isn't it? Yeah.
Canton.
Yeah, I know that field well. That was the game where our kicker Sean Sweesham completely blew his ACL out of the water and ended his season. So
yeah.
I mean, that field just traditionally has been a giant death trap. So good to hear they're finally doing a thing or two with it. So Chris, today on the show we have a certain agenda. We need to talk about training camp because that has been going on. What we're going to do today, guys, is kind of like we talked about on last time's show. We are not actually at training camp, so we're kind of just going off of reports. But we do want to give kind of an update on what's going on so far, players who are having good camps, bad camps, injuries, that kind of thing. Chris, we'll start with you today, sir. Redskins, first off, do we have any news headlines that we want to hit?
Well, I guess everybody's probably heard Keith Marshall.
Yeah. I was going to ask
tore
you about
his patella tendon in his knee. He's out for the season. This is the second straight year that he will end up on the IR, not even getting to the regular season. And that's kind of tough because he really Jay Gruden even pointed him out.
And you were very high on Keith Marshall. I remember
liked
coming out of the draft.
I liked the pick last year. Yeah, I did. He was going to have a tough time making the squad, but I felt like he could probably be a guy that got on the practice squad.
Right.
But we just wish him the best. I mean, it's his second straight year. He's going to have to, rehab an injury.
Yeah.
So just keep your head up, young man. I guess the next big thing is Jordan Reed's toe.
Yeah. He was. Now, I think he was sent to a specialist in Charlotte. Was that correct?
Yeah, he went and saw, I think it was Dr. Andrews in Charlotte. Or Dr. Anderson. Anyway, one of the two.
Yeah.
And apparently rest has been prescribed.
Okay.
Now, Michael Phillips of the Richmond Times-Dispatch had a good article today about that. This is an injury, Jordan said, that he had been nursing since the end of last year.
Oh.
And that it had gotten to where he was able to do his off-season workout. He went to the Redskins minicamp. But he decided to do a stem cell injection in the toe to help healing, and it woke everything up.
Now, you said this is going back to last season.
Yes, the end of 2016.
Are the Redskins going to be in some hot water for not putting this on the injury report? I mean, because look, the NFL, they get weird about this kind of stuff,
Florio, I'm sure, will be on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure Mike is slobbering right now.
Go ahead, Mike. Boot one up.
Anyway, long story short, it looks like this is just a rest issue. It's not a new injury. Again, we kind of glanced over it last week. A big toe injury sounds like, no big deal.
No, absolutely.
It's not.
Man. Big toe is so important.
It's not. So hopefully rest will get it to where it needs to be so he can get the season going. other than that, let's see. Jamison Crowder was back today. He'd been nursing a hamstring. Preston Smith is being evaluated for a sprained ankle. And I think they had a couple of heat-related situations the other
there's
day.
a lot of
Morgan
those
Moses,
going around.
but I think it's pretty standard.
Yeah. So no notable injuries, guys having to miss multiple
right
weeks.
now we're not other than Jordan Reed and Keith Marshall. Those are the only two.
Okay.
As far as standouts in camp,
Yeah, let's talk about that next. So I kind of just want to go. I mean, we can't hit every single
No,
player, but
no.
who reportedly is having a massive camp, and who are some guys that were projected to maybe do well and they're kind of falling off?
Well, right now I don't really evaluate a camp like that.
Okay.
For me, I mean, a camp is just one part of the story here because
Sure.
there are always going to be guys that flash in camp, and you're thinking, "Oh man, this guy's it."
And
then you get to preseason,
right, that's a good point.
and you don't see that guy anymore.
That's a very good point.
And the next thing you know, he's cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of guys putting good work in out there.
Well, let's talk about a few of them. The first guy I want to ask you directly about, sir, is Terrell Pryor. I don't think defenses are ready.
Listen, if he's anything like what we've seen right
Man.
now, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And really, I want to give a shout out to Josh Dotson too.
Oh, Dodson was
Now,
another guy I wanted to ask you
He
about
is
directly.
not getting the press that Pryor is, and this isn't taking anything away from Pryor.
Sure.
But right now, I am beyond excited
Yeah.
about what we have on the outside.
Absolutely.
And then you look at Jamison Crowder on the inside, and I'm loving what we've got right now. And this was my point. You know, back when we talked about free agents, and we lost Deshaun Jackson and we lost Pierre Garçon, and then we signed Terrell Pryor. And, you know, I remember saying, you know, look, Terrell Pryor, don't sleep on this guy. And if we can get Josh Dotson healthy and get him on the other side, this could still be a productive receiving
Well, it's almost
corps.
like you lose two, get two back. And
Right,
that appears to
and-
be the way things are going right now.
Right
So,
now, I mean, again, folks, what you have to understand is this. You're most of the time, not all the time, but the quarterbacks that are throwing these routes, whether it's Sudfeld, McCoy, or the starter Cousins, they're not getting the same kind of...
I like what you did there.
I don't know if you get that.
No, I got that. That was good.
You're not getting the same. You're not under the same duress, and you're not throwing into disguise coverages right now. You know, you're throwing single coverage. These are routes that are designed to be very hard on defensive backs.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And that's a very good point because, you know, a lot of people were shredding Josh Norman the other day.
oh
because,
yeah, I just finally cut off Twitter at that because
and you make such good points. First off, the quarterback has no pass rush.
Yeah, I mean-
number two, folks, Josh Norman's 5'10", Pryor 6'4". Come on,
well, it's a tough matchup. Right now, though, the thing that I'm excited about is watching Terrell Pryor in these situations. Defense is going to have a hard time with this guy.
I think so. I really think so.
You know, do you double him? And if you do that, then you create huge problems for yourself
Right.
over the middle with Jordan Reed, with
Crowder, Dotson.
Dots. You know, it's pretty exciting. I have felt like since the off season began to unfold like it is, we're still going to be very, very productive offensively.
I think so. I agree.
Another guy I want to give a shout out to is Trent Williams.
Yeah.
The dude has just looked fantastic.
Best LT in football.
And he's gone against another guy that I want to kind of get a shout out to, Junior Gillette.
Apparently, the reports are
dude-
saying good
now,
stuff.
he's yet to really beat Trent. He's worked Morgan Moses over a few times. But Trent was saying yesterday at his press conference, he goes, man, this guy's got a ton of moves. He's fast. Makes me work for everything I get.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody thought Gillette would be where he's at right now.
Yeah.
I didn't. I did not.
Yeah.
And right now, I get pretty excited thinking about him on the other side of Kerrigan.
Well, the other day, I think it might have been today or yesterday, Jim Tom Sula apparently is just lauded over the guy like crazy, talking about how explosive he's been, how quick he's been.
Yeah, I mean, his hallmark in New Orleans was just he physically he can do so much to beat a tackle.
Yeah.
Get low, he can bull rush, he uses his hands, he uses his speed. It's just kind of, hey, whatever it takes, I'm going to go beat you.
Yeah.
And he's brought a good attitude in there. So I'm really, really happy so far with how he's looked. Now, again, folks, please, I'm not making any predictions. I'm not saying, hey, this is a double-digit sack year.
Sure.
But I am saying that we have a pretty deep set of pass rushers right now, and that's a good problem to have.
Absolutely. I mean, you got
that's
Kerrigan,
a really good problem to have.
Preston
Smith, Trent Murphy when he comes back. Trent has looked really good. He's looked really, really quick. So really happy with what we're hearing out of the camp from him. Another guy that I've kind of watched every chance I've got is Chase Roulier.
Is he the
backup center?
Yeah.
This guy looks like he belongs.
Okay.
He really, really does, which is so nice in terms of depth, in terms of what he can do backing up Spencer Long.
Yeah.
If you have that injury, if you have an injury problem.
Yeah.
Again, Samaje Perine has the more camp's gone on, the more comfortable he's looked. Kind of started out slow. I think everything that we hoped he would be, he's really turning into. But again, I try not to live and die by every camp report.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
I really do, because, like I said, we're fixing to end the first full. This is the first full week of camp for most teams. Now, you got some work in the week before. Now you're going to start your second week and a full slate of preseason games. So that's going to be the next step.
Right, I agree, and I think
thing.
Camp is important. I don't want to
no,
minimize camp, but
it's huge.
Preseason is where the ears really perk up for me.
Well,
where
it's so different to me now with social media, because growing up there in the 80s. The only reports you got out of camp was from the newspaper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And nowadays there's GIFs and videos.
That's what I'm
everywhere.
saying. I mean, fans can shoot video and they send it to ththese different news outlets, and you're getting almost a constant barrage.
It's like a play-by-play.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it gets culled down, and, you see the big plays going on. But I try not to just get too high or too low with it.
Right.
It's just... it is what it is. I enjoy the good stuff. You try to take everything with a grain of salt. If you're a Redskin fan, you need to look up Kirk Cousins mic'd up yesterday.
Oh, fantastic.
Must-see TV.
Fantastic.
It was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. And for what it's worth, I feel like Kirk's having a fine camp.
I didn't know Kirk was that funny. Like, I was
But see, what's funny about that guy
is
he doesn't try. That's him.
No, it's a very flat, kind of dry humor.
He's just a nerdy guy.
It's like watching The Office almost. I mean,
Yeah, he's just kind of this. I mean, and teammates last year talked about it. He's just lovable, nerdy guy that just, says whatever comes to his head.
I think my favorite line was, the girl gives him water. He said, "Thank you," and then she said, "You're welcome." He's like, "Yep, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. That's the recipe."
And I'm sorry. I mean, if you're a hater, you're a hater. But man, there's no way you can't like this guy.
Yeah, he is lovable.
He just is.
Yeah.
But anyway, my big overall impression is I like the way camp's headed.
Yeah.
Our 2 Alabama rookies, Anderson, outside linebacker, Jonathan Allen at defensive line. Jonathan Allen's coming in for big props from the offensive line he's working against. Ryan Anderson, I think from a pass rush and an edge setting, run stopping standpoint, has looked very good. In coverage, he does seem a little bit tentative, but that's to be expected. This is a completely new animal right now.
Sure.
So, folks, don't get too disappointed.
Don't overanalyze yet. I mean,
a little early for that. But anyway, I think camp's going well. The thing I always think about, my biggest fear in these things is injuries, and so far we're intact in terms of our starting and second. Most of our core players, the only guy we've lost so far to a season-ending injury is Marshall. So,
and that's the next thing I was going to ask you, is that you got to be happy about the injury report.
Yeah, so far so good. Can't really complain about that. So far, good camp.
Okay, all right,
Patrick. What's the news out of Latrobe?
Latrobe, PA. Well, let's see. We've really got a lot of camp-related news. We only have one thing on the list today that is non-camp related, and that is, Chris, you remember a couple years ago that really bad movie called The Brett Favre Retirement?
Yeah.
Well, apparently there's a sequel, and it's called The Ben Roethlisberger Retirement. So we all remember back in March, Ben Roethlisberger, after the tough loss to New England, he started flirting with retirement, saying, I'm not going to commit to playing this year yet. Well, then, of course, he did commit. Well, it turns out that we're not out of the woods yet in terms of he's going to play this year. He already committed to this year, but next year, kind of a toss-up. A longtime Steelers writer Ed Bouchette recently had a one-on-one interview with Roethlisberger, and in the interview, Roethlisberger told Bouchette that he would not commit to play beyond 2017. Told Bouchette, quote, I've been blessed to do this game a long time. I think it's just seeing my kids growing up, and in the offseason, I love getting to spend time with them. And then I come here, and football season just has to take up so much of my time. Even when you get home, I try my best to turn it off when I walk in the door. I think I do a pretty good job of that, but it still consumes you in a way. Roethlisberger went on to mention his age. He is 35 years old. He'll be 36 next birthday. 14th year going into the league. And he also cited the latest CTE study that just came out. About 90% of the brains that were donated did have CTE in them. So, okay. I want to make my position very clear on this. And Chris, jump in at any time and tell me how you feel. I'm not mad at Roethlisberger for contemplating retirement. The dude is 35 years old, going to be 36, 14th year going into this league. He does have a wife. He does have kids. And I think the natural inclination for football fans when we hear the letter CTE is to go, la, 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 don't want to hear it. But it is real. I mean, it is a real thing.
Listen, yes, that's exactly right. Right now, I think, it's something you have to think about and put in the equation.
Yes. Now, maybe, and we don't have the time to do it on this episode, but I would love at some point to do maybe just a different podcast and talk about this CTE issue, because it really is a compelling issue, because you seem to have two sides. One side says it's completely 100% related. The other side says, calm down. And then you've got the actual smart scientist in the middle saying, guys, we don't really know. We don't have concrete evidence just yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because do you follow Pro Football Doc on Twitter, Dr. David Schell?
I think I do.
He wrote a great article the other day. I think it was the San Diego Tribune. It was one of those local San Diego newspapers. But just talking about how, look, we all need to chill a little bit. We are not ready to make any sort of statement. Well, we're still bringing in the results. We're still testing.
And the one thing that I would like to know about that report, and this is all I'll say about it.
Okay.
But the report that said 90% of the brains that were tested, I would love to know who those players were, what positions they played, and how long they played.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point.
Because I think it's a little bit misleading to just have this shock. There's so much shock value to say that, 90% of the 87 brains that we studied had CTE.
Right.
And I would just like to know, are we talking about a player that played football for 3 years?
Yes. Did you test 10 players? Did you test 100 players? I mean, yeah, there are variables. So
I just think, and I'm not putting my head in the sand on it, but folks, the only thing that I'll say, and I'll get off the soapbox, sports, no matter what you choose to play, if you're going to pursue a sport, you're going to assume risk.
Absolutely. It's dangerous. Yes.
Now, what I consider useful about this is it is information.
Right.
And a player, that's what you need, is information.
Yeah.
And you can decide, okay, is it worth it for me, with all the information that I have at hand, is it worth it for me to continue my playing career? Or should I just retire?
Absolutely.
And go into accounting?
And look, when you pile a wife and 3 children on top of that, yeah, I'm sure it does get a little more complicated at that point.
Exactly. I just,
Again, I want to make my position clear. I'm not mad at Ben for contemplating retirement, but it's how he's doing it, because he says that, and then a couple days later, he was asked in an interview, hey, Ben, you back next year? Well, I certainly hope so. It's like, Ben, come on, dude. If you're going to do that wishy-washy stuff, just don't say anything.
Well, did you see somebody ask him about somebody brought up his offensive line?
Oh, and he said, if they can play like that, I could play for a couple more years.
Exactly.
And it's like, but you just said you're not committing. Like,
listen, right, of the modern era quarterbacks, by far, Peyton Manning handled his departure the best.
10 out of 10. Absolutely.
But it was much easier for Peyton because he knew that he had come to the end of the road.
Yes.
Favre, when he started it, I think he knew he could still play, but did he want to play? And I kind of think that's where Ben's at. I can still play, but do I want to do this? And see, the dude in the middle is Pittsburgh, is the Steelers.
Yeah.
Because they're in this limbo.
Not to mention, we did just kind of give him a contract, short couple years ago. So it's like, okay, Ben. Look, here's what I'll say about it. Ben, this is not a knock on Ben. I love Ben. He's my quarterback. He's my guy. But at this point, it is becoming a little bit of a distraction. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, it's becoming this thing where it's like it hogs the media. They eat it up. And then all of a sudden, we're not focusing on camp. We're not focusing on, what we really need to focus on. We're focusing on Ben Roethlisberger's soapbox. Maybe not soapbox, maybe isn't the right word. I'm just saying Ben needs to play hard, and when you're done, call it quits. Just do what you got to do, man, and then when you're done, you're done. There's no need to draw this thing out like Brett Favre did. You don't want to be that guy. You just don't. You don't want to be that guy.
You really don't. And look where it got Brett Favre. It got Brett Favre sent to to New York.
Well, not only that, dude, but I would say Brett Favre went to a place of, in everybody's minds, glory to, after that, everybody was just like, oh, boy, it's Brett Favre. Here we go. You know what I mean? I felt like his popularity sort of dipped a little bit. And maybe Ben doesn't care about that kind of stuff, but Ben just needs to play football. When you're done, call it quits.
I agree. So, yeah, I guess that's the big news item.
That's the big news
Pittsburgh.
Item.
So all right, so any big injuries?
Okay, so the injury bug has kind of been going through our camp. Now, the good news is that nobody's out for the season. There are no season-ending injuries. Sammy Coates, obviously, we already know he's dealing with recovering from that knee scope he had, so he's still been out. Juju Smith-Schuster, a little bit of a scare. He sprained his ankle on the first day of camp and wide receiver drills. Thankfully, it was nothing more than that because he did return to pads yesterday and also practiced today as well. So that was very encouraging.
That's good.
That's very good. That's very good. Also training with Hines Ward. Apparently, Ward's been down there as a wide receiver intern, been running routes with him. And it's funny because, Smith-Schuster has been compared to Hines Ward with how physical he is, with how hard he hits. So it's kind of fun to see Hines Ward working with him directly. Cam Sutton, our third-round draft pick cornerback out of Tennessee. So his injury is classified as not serious, but I'm a little nervous because he has yet to return from it. Day 2 of practice, he had a lower body injury. Tomlin said it wasn't significant. Coaching staff said it was okay, but he has still not been back to practice yet.
Okay.
So
Patrick, real quick.
I think I know what you're going to ask me.
One of the first things I saw the other morning was Sinquez Golden.
Carted
off the field.
Carted off.
Dude.
It's like watching a TV show and then the next season is just like, the first season, or like playing a sequel to a really good video game and then all they did was try to copy it. It's kind of what it feels like at this point. I wish this were kind of a sick practical joke, but it's kind of not.
But it's not.
It's not. And what's really interesting about the injury was that last season when he got injured, it was the first day of padded practice. Well, fast forward to 2017, first day of padded practice.
Wow.
Another injury. Now, here's the quote-unquote good news. The good news is that it was a hamstring injury. It's being classified as not serious. He's also not going to need surgery. And he could return within a couple of weeks. So that's the quote-unquote good news. But, Chris, let me ask you, at this point, does it matter?
Well, yeah,
this is a guy who, okay, I want to put some things into perspective. So Carnell Lake, who is our cornerbacks, or who is our defensive backs coach, he said very plainly in the OTA part of the season, if this guy makes a team, it's going to be special teams. You then had Kevin Colbert more than one time sort of blast Golson. Now you get Golson injured again, and he's not going to be back for a couple of weeks. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying the Steelers are going to go ahead and release him and waive him. I'm sure they'll let him get back on the field, bring him through training camp, or bring him through the rest of camp, bring him through the preseason. Let's see what he can do. But, Chris, at this point, man.
Well, I was going to say, you kind of feel like him, and like I did a little bit with Junior Gillette through the first 2 years with the injury with him, that is, you You can't miss what you haven't had.
Well, no, exactly. And a lot of people were broken up about it. I'm like you, man. I don't know what he was. So.
That's what I'm saying. You don't know what this guy can do because you haven't seen it. So,
no, I want to be very clear about this. I was really disappointed in some fans, just some of the snarky remarks. Look, guys, it's not like Golson plans to get injured.
No.
I mean, like,
no.
I saw some really nasty comments towards him, making fun of him. Yeah, because he totally planned to have that hamstring stretch. Right. I wish Senquez Golson all the best. Maybe if the Steelers do release him, maybe he wants to try out baseball because he did have a baseball background. I don't know, but there's no use getting mad at him. I just think that's really low to kick him while he's down like that. But it just doesn't appear. It sounds like the universe is trying to tell the guy something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
at
pick
this
something
point,
else.
yeah.
Pick something else.
But that's where he's at. Next guy on the list for an injury was James Conner. We had a little bit of a scare here. He had a shoulder injury on Monday that forced him to leave practice early. It was a padded practice. I think it was actually the first day of padded practice. It was a shoulder injury. He was later sent to a Pittsburgh hospital for further evaluation. Also was seen later in the day wearing a sling, but Chris, it turns out it was a AC joint. It was a sprained AC joint. The good news is that it was not a major sprain and that he most likely could return to practice tomorrow is what they're saying. They're classifying him as day to day instead of week to week. So that was very exciting. A little bit of a scare there with him. Today's injury report, Alejandro Villanueva got rolled over today as they were classifying it as. I'm not really sure what that means, got rolled over. How do you roll over 6'9" Alejandro Villanueva? But apparently they did. Was slow to get up, but he did return to practice, so that was encouraging. Ryan Shazier injured his quad today. He was later seen on the sideline icing it, but Mike Tomlin said it was not major. And then a very big scare today, Chris. Ben Roethlisberger turned his ankle, but then after practice, Mike Tomlin asked about it. He said, no problem. Everything's fine.
And tomorrow, Ben will talk about how it's the worst ankle injury he's ever had.
Yes, and how he's contemplating retirement.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So that's kind of the injury report. You know, again, very much like you guys, Chris, no season-ending stuff.
So
all
far.
Just there have been a couple of guys with some heat-related stuff, but that's pretty normal this time of year.
Yep.
But pretty good on the injury front. Just good to see some of these guys that were a little scary at first have already been cleared, so that's good. Moving on to the big camp storylines. The first one we'll talk about is Artie Burns versus Antonio Brown. So this is one of the biggest narratives coming out of camp so far. Artie and AB have been going at it one-on-one against each other in the wide receiver defensive back drills, and it's been extremely heated and competitive at times. Now, AB, of course, has won the majority of the matchups. That is to be expected. But Burns is holding his own a lot better than he did last year. He's mirroring routes a lot better. He's staying closer. And even though AB has baptized him a lot, he really is doing a lot better. Alex Kozora of Steelers Depot, this was a really interesting stat that he pulled up. Last year in camp, Antonio Brown caught 75% of his targets against Artie Burns. This year, Chris, 43%. Yes. So Artie Burns apparently has been working this offseason and really fine-tuning his game. Like I said, AB kind of has gotten the best of him still. In fact, there was even a funny moment earlier in camp. AB made this crazy catch over the top of him. He looked at Artie, and then he looked at the defensive backs coach, Carnell Lake, and said, get me somebody who can cover. And then apparently they had a little bit of an argument there, but they hugged it out and shook after practice, so it was all good. But look, man, if you're Artie Burns, this is an amazing opportunity for you. You know, you have got a chance to sit under the best wide receiver in football, a guy who I consider to be the pinnacle of footwork and route running at the position.
Yeah.
And you get a chance to sit under this guy every single practice and go against him. I mean, think about how much better that's going to make Artie Burns.
Yep.
So he really better cherish this time he has. Joshua Dobbs is the next guy we got to talk about. One of the biggest narrative coming out for Dobbs, Chris, is exactly what we said coming out of the draft. All over the place, kind of inconsistent. 1 minute he's had I think it was the other day. I think it was Monday's padded practice. Alex Kozora, again, sourcing him, 14 of 14. Would have been 14 of 14 if he did not have 2 drops. Super accurate, comfortable in the pocket. The following day after that, reportedly throws like 3 or 4 interceptions.
Yeah. So,
and we kind of knew that with Dobbs coming out of the draft. You know, this is a guy who's got a lot to work on, also has a lot of things to like. So, you know, he's still developing. We're still working on him. Now, one of the good things about Josh Dobbs in this, well, maybe I shouldn't say good, but Landry Jones has been down lately with an injury as well. I think it was an abdominal injury. So Dobbs has got a big opportunity other than Ben to get a lot of first-team reps. So that's good time for him. But he's kind of been all over the place. He's having a solid camp overall. That seems to be the word on the street. The next guy on the list is Justin Hunter. Chris, this is probably the biggest narrative of the entire camp. Justin Hunter, if we had an MVP of our camp right now, it's Justin Hunter. This guy has caught, get ready, Chris, 8 touchdown passes so far. That is more than all the other wide receivers combined in camp so far. That includes Antonio Brown. Ben Roethlisberger was asked about him directly, and he said, I don't want to speak too soon, but ended it that way. And then today, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, threw a beautiful throw to the back of the end zone. 3 flags were thrown for defensive pass interference on Ross Cockrell. Somehow, some way, Hunter still makes the catch. Ben runs to the back of the end zone and says, take a kneel, boy. So I guess what I'm trying to say is here's a guy who we talked about in our roster evaluation show as being on the lower end of the totem pole.
Right.
A guy who really had to work hard to make the roster. When you look at, Juju Smith-Schuster is down with an ankle injury. Sammy Coates is down with the knee scope, and Martavis Bryant has still not been reinstated. So look at the opportunity that he has had to hog the spotlight.
Yeah.
And for those of you out there that say camp isn't important, this is why camp is important. When you get these opportunities and you're a guy on the lower end of the depth chart, that's kind of how you make your money.
Oh yeah, that's
how you get coaches' attention.
You make a team.
Yes, absolutely. So,
exactly.
Todd Haley's had a lot of good things to say about him. The biggest thing with him is he's been a big red zone threat thus far in camp. And, man, when you look at Ben Roethlisberger over the years, he loves his tall targets. Hunter is 6'4", so I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not going to make any preliminary 53-man roster evaluations right now. It's way too early for that. But if you put a gun to my head right now and said, is he making this team? Absolutely. Ayers is gone. Coates is gone. Some of these other guys are gone. He's on that roster based on how he's been playing this camp. Right. So, kind of a sleeper. The next guy is TJ Watt. We can all be excited. Our first-round draft pick is indeed having a good camp. And I think the exciting thing to hear about TJ Watt is you all the time hear that a guy had a good day or made a really good play or did a nice thing. But the thing about Watt is every single day we have had camp, all the scouts, all the reporters are saying he did awesome. I mean, it's consistent. Each day, you're hearing had a great camp, had a great camp, had a great camp. One of the other things they're saying about him is that he seems to be excelling in every area of the position. Pass rush, stepping out into coverage, doing good in the run. So that's really exciting to hear. One of the things that the coaching staff had to say about him was that they were surprised at his overall technique in getting after the quarterback, because that's kind of the big thing with players coming out of college, right? It's they've got the raw athleticism. They've got all that there, but it's just a matter of fine-tuning that technique, and they're saying that already he's just displaying a lot of maturity for what he's doing. So that's exciting to hear about our first-round draft pick. The next guy is Tyler Matakevich. Chris, Dirty Reds having a nice camp, man. They're saying that he's covering well. They're saying that he's tackling well. And, this is a guy who, again, already just because of where, when you look at the roster, already gets bumped up. But, man, when he's playing like this in camp, it makes you excited.
Yeah.
Well, excited is not the word. I don't want anything to happen to Vince Williams. But if Dirty Red's going to keep playing like this, if he does get a shot, you're going to be comfortable with him. So that was exciting to hear. James Conner, not really entirely surprising here, but even though he did get injured on the first padded practice, he was having a monster day. Caught the attention of not only the local media, but guys like Rappaport, Ledyard, some of the other big guys were talking about him. I thought this was pretty funny. They had this one drill called backs on backers. And apparently Alex Kozora, again of Steelers Depot, charted that he was 5-2 again in the backs and backers session. At one point, Mike Tomlin was so fired up that he said, does anybody want a piece of 3-0? Nobody responded. And then Todd Haley said, it's awfully quiet out here, James. So apparently Connor's having himself a nice camp, as is to be expected. The last guy on the list I want to talk about is Mike Hilton. Hilton was a guy, Chris, that I feel bad now about not mentioning him in the roster evaluation show. This was a guy who generated a decent amount of buzz in OTAs and training, or OTAs and minicamp. I didn't really focus on any of the undrafted free agents. It's not that I don't think they can make the roster. I mean, look no further than a guy like Eli Rogers. It's just I'm always a little skeptical of the UDAs.
Right.
Generated a lot of buzz in OTAs and minicamp. Ramon Foster even was railing about him during that time. Apparently, he has been translating that into camp as well. Tackling well, hitting very hard, sticking close to receivers. And, he's kind of a neat story because he's only 5'9". Another thing that I think is kind of interesting is when you look at Senquez Golson, 5'9", out of Ole Miss. This guy's 5'9", out of Ole Miss. So maybe he could be Senquez Golson 2.0. But he's a guy who's really, really short, but he does not lack confidence. He's really undersized, but he plays with a lot of intensity. The coaches seem to really, really like him. And he's another guy that right now, if you ask me, is he making the 53? Probably. I mean, because of how much work he has been doing, they say he's solid. They say he's consistent every day. And that could be a really, really big story for him. So, and I think that about wraps it up, really, for our camp so far. Those are the biggest narratives. I know tomorrow we do have our Friday Night Lights practice. And then next week, I believe we go into our first preseason game.
Yes.
So
that's when I get more excited about it. Yeah. So you like that Monday morning quarterback article
about
Martavis?
That was good stuff. That was very good stuff. Which, speaking of Martavis Bryant, by the way, folks, the world can now go back to normal living. Martavis Bryant and Ben Roethlisberger finally had their heart-to-heart.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Now, for some of you that might have been wondering why we did not talk about that here on the show, stuff like that just doesn't.
Yeah, that's team stuff.
Look, man, my position on it was man up, both of you, have the conversation.
And move on.
And apparently they did. Roethlisberger said it went good. And a really interesting report went up the other day, Chris. Apparently Bryant has met all the requirements.
Yeah, the article, and
I mean, apparently he has done everything they've asked him to do.
The Steelers, both Martavis and the Steelers as an organization feel like he has. The NFL is just dragging his feet.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, at this point, is it Roger Goodell just kind of being a douche?
I don't know. I don't know how involved in situations like this. Is it Roger Goodell or is it Troy Vincent? But I don't know. They said the last remaining thing apparently is he's got to show he's going to have continued rehab in Pittsburgh. Right. And according to Martavis, he's got that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I mean, you made a really good point when we talked about this last week in saying that the NFL is a multi-million, maybe even billion-dollar business.
Yeah, it's a
corporation.
multi-billion-dollar business.
You have to. You'd like to think that a multi-billion-dollar business is full of smart people who are organized and do things. And the fact that at this point, the fact that it's dragging out like this, I just don't understand.
Yeah, I don't either. But whatever.
It is what it is. I mean, look, he's going to make the team either way. I don't think there's any, need to worry about if he doesn't get any, reps in training camp, but he's not going to make the team. The Steelers want him back. It's just at this point, it really is getting a little ridiculous at this point.
Definitely.
But, okay, Chris, that's kind of the big news coming out of camp for me. I think that's all I got. You?
Yeah, that's all I got. I think next week, it'll be interesting because we'll have the preseason games.
Preseason, and you people at home will get a taste. You newcomers to the show will get a little bit of taste of the game recaps, the flagship shows here on the Steelskin Show. Chris, I don't think I want to talk anymore.
Me either.
All right, guys, remember, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at Steelskin Show. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Steelskin Show. And YouTube, we do have a YouTube channel. Go subscribe there. iTunes, if you're listening to the show on iTunes, remember to please rate and please subscribe and write a review. Chris, that's all I got, man. All right, guys, we will be back next week with our first preseason game recap. But until then,